We found a local daily production SOP, and at first glance, it looks like a boring operations detail. A file changed, a report appeared, a scheduled job ran. But the useful lesson is not that the machine produced another artifact. The useful lesson is what the artifact forced us to decide. In AI creator workflows, people often rush to automate the visible step, collect the files, render the video, push the upload. That sounds efficient, but it can hide the most important part of the system. The artifact is only valuable when it makes the next operator decision clearer. That is why today's lesson is simple. Automation is not autopilot. The goal is not to remove judgment from the loop. The goal is to schedule the moment where judgment becomes possible, visible, and repeatable. This matters because the internet rewards consistency, but a channel is not built by consistency alone. It is built by a repeatable standard for what deserves to be made today. The first frame should therefore show the artifact and the conflict before the viewer has to understand our local workflow. I want the opening to feel like a build log, not a lecture. Here is the thing that happened, here is the wrong conclusion, and here is the mechanism hiding inside the work. The viewer does not need our repo history to understand this. The visible promise is simple. A daily system found a local daily production SOP, and the important question became whether that object deserved a public story. That is why the first visual cannot be a workflow map. It has to be a conflict. A clean artifact on one side, a blocked autopilot arrow on the other, and a gate in the middle that asks whether the idea earned the next step. This also changes the tone of the video. We are not saying the system is magical. We are showing where it hesitates, where it checks itself, and why that hesitation protects the channel from publishing polished noise. The obvious fix is tempting. Let the scheduler run straight from source files to upload. If you are trying to publish daily, this feels reasonable. You already have source material. You already have a renderer. You already have a publishing tool, so why not connect the pipes and let the whole thing run? The problem is that this turns the pipeline into a file factory. It optimizes for motion, not for selection. A weak topic can still become a clean MP4. A shallow argument can still get a good voiceover. A misleading thumbnail can still pass a path check. When that happens, automation has not improved the content system. It has only made weak decisions cheaper and faster. For a daily creator pipeline, speed is useful only after the decision quality is protected. Another way to say it, upload automation is downstream leverage. If the upstream decision is wrong, downstream leverage only multiplies the wrong thing. So the question is not whether the tool can publish. The question is what has to be proven before the tool is allowed to keep going. That is why the worker should not be judged only by whether it creates a file. It should be judged by whether it creates a defensible release candidate. A file factory feels productive because every stage leaves output, but output is an easy metric to fake. The harder metric is whether the output made the next decision less ambiguous. In a daily workflow, the clock creates pressure. If the scheduler sees a source file, the renderer sees a script, and the publisher sees an MP4, the whole chain can move even when the idea is too thin. The more automated the downstream steps become, the more expensive a weak upstream choice becomes. A bad topic no longer wastes one writing session. It consumes voice generation, render time, thumbnail work, and a public slot. The real diagnosis is that publishing is not one action. It is a chain of different judgments. First, we have to decide whether the evidence contains a public lesson. Then we have to decide whether that lesson has a contradiction strong enough for the first sentence. Then we have to decide whether there is a mechanism, not just a vibe. Then we have to decide whether the proof can be shown without leaking private text, prompts, account details, or internal material. Finally, we decide whether the video package is ready for a public channel. If we collapse all of those decisions into one upload button, we lose the ability to learn from the run. The workflow may look automated, but the learning loop becomes invisible. This is especially dangerous for AI creation because the system can always produce something plausible. Plausible is not the same as useful. The daily process needs to ask, what changed, what failed, what rule did we learn, and why would a viewer outside our local project care? The answer has to survive outside the team. A viewer should not need our repo history to understand the pain or the payoff. So the unit of analysis should not be the upload, it should be the judgment chain. Each judgment asks a different question, and each question needs a different visible artifact. Evidence asks whether something real happened. Contradiction asks whether a stranger can feel the tension. Mechanism asks whether the lesson is reusable. Proof asks whether the claim can be shown safely. Release readiness is the last judgment, not the first. At that point, the package should already know what video it points to, what title it promises, what thumbnail it uses, and what evidence record supports it. The mechanism I want to name is the decision gate. A decision gate is not a meeting and it is not a permission ritual. It is a structured pause where an artifact must answer a specific question. Did today's source material contain a publishable lesson? Did the first sentence start from a concrete finding instead of generic setup? Does the middle of the video explain a mechanism that a stranger can reuse? Does the proof scene show a shape of evidence without exposing private material? Does the next action become obvious? When the answer is yes, the pipeline continues. When the answer is no, the pipeline should stop or ask for a better source. That is the difference between automation and autopilot. I like the word gate because it is narrower than a checklist. A checklist can be satisfied mechanically. A gate has a purpose: prevent a known failure mode from crossing into the next stage. In this case, the failure mode is not technical. It is publishing a video before the idea has earned the viewer's time. So the gate must be specific enough to reject output that looks finished but does not yet carry a public argument. The decision gate is useful because it turns taste into a local contract. It does not say, trust the operator. It says, show the artifact, name the failure mode, and prove the release candidate is coherent. A good gate is narrow. It should reject one known failure mode instead of trying to judge everything at once. Here, the failure mode is a finished-looking video with an unfinished argument. That makes the gate practical for automation. The machine can check scene count, duration, audio, file alignment, thumbnail path, and whether a script contains the required proof beats before it spends the next hour rendering. In this case, the proof is not a secret document, and it is not a dramatic demo. It is the shape of the production packet. There is source evidence. There is a topic score. There is a YouTube script. There is a remotion brief. There is a rendered video. There is a publisher preflight. Each object answers a different question. The score asks whether the topic is worth turning into content. The script asks whether the idea has a retention line. The remotion brief asks whether the idea can be seen, not only heard. The video manifest asks whether the file actually has video and audio. The publisher batch asks whether the release package points to the same candidate. Together, those artifacts make the process auditable without exposing the private source material behind it. Notice what we are not doing here. We are not showing private notes as content. We are not asking the audience to care about a file name. We are abstracting the local proof into a general production lesson. Make the packet visible, then let the packet decide what is ready. The proof scene can be simple, but it has to be concrete: cards, checks, hashes, durations, paths, and gates. The proof should stay public safe. We can show the shape of a local daily production SOP, that an artifact exists, that it produced a score, that it became a script, and that the script became a release candidate. We do not need to show private source pros or internal prompts. The public lesson is carried by structure. Evidence came first, then a decision, then production, then a release package. For the video, that means the screen should keep changing. One beat can show the evidence card, the next can show the score, the next can show the script, the next can show the batch alignment check. The quality gate matters because a daily workflow creates pressure to accept whatever is available. If the source artifact is thin, the system should say so. If the visual proof is weak, the system should not pretend the video is ready. If the final package points to one MP4 but the publisher batch points to another file, that is not a small bookkeeping issue. It means the release candidate is ambiguous. This is where market research also enters the loop. The channels we study do not open with admin context. They open with a concrete tension, a visible object, or a question the viewer already cares about. So our automation has to score for that before it spends time on voice, render, and upload preposition. For YouTube, this is practical, not philosophical. The viewer decides quickly whether the video has a promise. The platform then measures whether that promise kept people watching. A daily system therefore needs a gate for the first frame, the first sentence, the middle mechanism, and the final rule. Without those gates, daily output becomes noise. The gate is also how we avoid hiding weak content behind expensive production polish. The same gate has to judge visual density. A 10-minute video with 8 static slides is not a good video. The viewer hears movement, but the screen says nothing is happening. A better rule is simple. 2 or 3 sentences should create a new visual beat. The large chapter can stay the same, but the screen state has to move with the argument. That is why the worker should fail if it only lengthens narration. Duration has to come from more examples, more proof steps, more diagrams, and more scene transitions, not from holding one slide longer. The operating rule is, automate the packet, keep the publishing decision explicit. This means the scheduler can create the packet, it can collect evidence, score the topic, draft the script, write the remotion job, synthesize the voiceover, render the MP4, and prepare the publisher batch. but the system should still make the release decision explicit. For me, that is the practical compromise. The machine does the repeatable production work. The workflow preserves the judgment that protects the channel. Over time, the results feed back into the next run: impressions, click-through rate, retention, traffic source, and which opening patterns actually worked. That makes the daily pipeline a learning system instead of a blind conveyor belt. There is also a second feedback loop: market pattern transfer. We can study strong channels for how they stage the first 30 seconds, how they name a mistake, how they keep one concept on screen, and how they avoid burying the promise. Then our templates can encode those patterns without copying their footage or voice. That is how research becomes production behavior. The worker should therefore leave a report behind every day, not just an MP4, because the report is what lets tomorrow's selection improve. Once the package is public, the feedback loop should become part of tomorrow's selection. Low impressions point to topic and packaging. Low click-through points to title and thumbnail. Early drop-off points to the first 30 seconds. This is where competitor research becomes useful. We do not copy their footage or voice. We copy the production behavior. Concrete object first, contradiction early, one visible idea per beat, and a title that names the mistake. The daily worker should therefore leave both a video and a learning record. The video is today's output. The record is how tomorrow's output becomes less random. That is the rule I want the daily pipeline to keep. Do not automate just because the next command can run. Automate when the next artifact makes the next decision easier to trust. A daily publishing system needs speed, but it also needs a visible standard for why this topic, why this title, why this proof, and why this upload today. If the answer is clear, the pipeline should move. If the answer is not clear, stopping is not failure. It is the system protecting tomorrow's channel. The channel grows when each daily run leaves behind more than a video. It should leave behind a better topic filter, a better opening pattern, a better proof standard, and better evidence for what to make next. That is the difference between making content every day and learning how to make better content every day. The rule is not anti-automation. It is stricter automation. Automate the packet. Keep the publishing decision explicit. The system should move fast only after the evidence, the visual proof, and the release package agree. When that agreement exists, daily publishing can be genuinely automatic. Without that agreement, stopping is not a delay. It is the channel protecting its own standard.